Exploration is the art of walking into the unknown and hoping you'll walk back out. But sometimes the unknown wins. These aren't the stories of triumphant returns, ticker tape parades, or knighthoods in drawing rooms. These are the ones who found what they were looking for or didn't, and paid for it with everything. No rescue, no second chance, no homecoming. This is the top 10 explorers who never made it back. Ranked by the scope of their ambition, the significance of their discoveries, and the sheer finality of how it ended. Let's begin. At number 10, George Bass. Bass was a British naval surgeon and explorer who helped confirm that Tasmania was not connected to mainland Australia, a major geographic finding for colonial navigation in the southern Pacific. In 1803, he set sail from Sydney, bound for Tahiti, possibly continuing onward to Spanish South America. Neither Bass nor his ship, the Venus, were ever seen again. No confirmed wreckage has been identified. No survivors surfaced. No definitive account explains what happened. Bass simply disappeared. Some speculation suggests capture by Spanish authorities. Others propose shipwreck in the vastness of the Pacific. But the truth is, we don't know, and we likely never will. Bass gave the world clarity about one island, and then vanished into the same ocean he had charted. His name remains on maps. His fate does not. Coming in at number 9, René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle. La Salle was one of France's most ambitious explorers. He traveled down the Mississippi River to its mouth, claimed the entire Louisiana basin for King Louis XIV, and dreamed of a French empire stretching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. But ambition is not the same as execution. In 1684, La Salle led an expedition to establish a colony at the mouth of the Mississippi. He missed, badly. His fleet landed hundreds of miles off course somewhere on the coast of Texas. Ships were lost, supplies ran out, disease spread, morale collapsed. By 1687, his men had had enough. La Salle was murdered by his own expedition members during an internal mutiny, shot and killed, left in the wilderness. No confirmed remains were ever recovered. The man who claimed an empire for France died alone in a land that wanted nothing to do with him. Exploration ends when your own people turn on you. Number 8 is Roald Amundsen. This one stings because Amundsen was the gold standard, the man who beat Robert Falcon Scott to the South Pole, the first to navigate the Northwest Passage, a meticulous planner, a survivor, and yet he never made it home either. In 1928, Amundsen learned that Italian explorer Umberto Nobile had crashed his airship in the Arctic. Amundsen, 55 years old and long retired, immediately organized a rescue flight. He took off from Norway in a French seaplane. He was never seen again. No crash site was ever confirmed. No bodies recovered. Just silence over the Barents Sea. The irony is brutal. The man who survived the most hostile places on Earth disappeared trying to save someone else. He conquered the poles, but the Arctic took him anyway. Amundsen's inclusion here is borderline, since this was technically a rescue mission, not a discovery expedition. But the man spent his entire life in pursuit of the unknown, and that pursuit is what killed him. He earns his place. At number 7, Vitus Bering. Bering was a Danish-born navigator in the service of the Russian Empire, and he answered one of the great geographic questions of the 18th century. Is Asia connected to North America? The answer was no, and proving it nearly killed him the first time. In 1741, during his second expedition, the Great Northern Expedition, Bering successfully charted the Alaskan coast and the strait that now bears his name. But on the return voyage, his ship was battered by storms, ran aground, and wrecked on a barren island in the Commander Islands chain. After months of illness, Bering died on that island in December 1741. He was buried there. His crew, starving and sick, survived the winter by eating sea otters and other local wildlife, then built a smaller boat from the wreckage and limped home. Bering's name is on the map. His body is still on the island. He confirmed that 2 continents were separate and the gap between them swallowed him whole. Reaching our number 6 spot, Robert Falcon Scott. Scott is exploration's most famous tragedy. In 1911, he led a British expedition to be the first to reach the South Pole. He and his team arrived in January 1912, only to find a Norwegian flag already planted in the ice. Roald Amundsen had beaten them by over a month. Defeated and exhausted, Scott's team began the 800-mile return march. They never made it. One by one, the men succumbed. Lawrence Oates famously walked into a blizzard with the words, "I am just going outside and maybe some time." Edgar Evans collapsed and died. Scott, Edward Wilson, and Henry Bowers were trapped by weather just 11 miles from a supply depot. Scott's final diary entry, written as he froze to death: "We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more." Their bodies were found 8 months later, still in the tent. Scott reached his goal, but the cost of losing the race was everything. At number 5, we have Ludwig Leichhardt. Leichhardt was a Prussian-born explorer obsessed with the Australian interior, a vast, hostile, and largely unmapped expanse that had already swallowed multiple expeditions. In 1848, he set out from Queensland across the continent to the west coast. It was an enormous undertaking, thousands of miles through desert, with no established routes and minimal supplies. Leichhardt and his party of 7 men, along with their pack animals and provisions, vanished. No verifiable remains have ever been found. No letters, no confirmed artifacts, no explanation. Theories range from Aboriginal attack to starvation, disease, or drowning in an inland flood. But the truth is we don't know, and we likely never will. Leichhardt's disappearance is one of exploration's purest mysteries. He walked into the center of Australia and was erased. The continent he sought to map consumed him entirely. Number 4. Percy Fawcett. Fawcett was a British artillery officer, surveyor, and obsessive. He spent years exploring the Amazon, mapping borders, surviving disease, and developing an unshakable belief that deep in the Brazilian jungle lay the remains of an advanced lost civilization, a city he called Zed. In 1925, at age 57, Fawcett led a small expedition into the Mato Grosso region with his son Jack and Jack's best friend. He told people not to risk their lives searching for him if they failed to return. They didn't return. No bodies, no camp, no evidence. Numerous search parties followed. Some met tragic ends of their own. Theories proliferated: tribal killings, disease, starvation, wild animals, or voluntary integration into indigenous society. Fawcett became a legend because he vanished. The mystery outlived the man, and the jungle, as always, kept its secrets. He went looking for a lost city and became one himself. Claiming the number 3 position, Sir John Franklin. Franklin's expedition is the gold standard of catastrophic failure. In 1845, Franklin led 2 ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, with 129 men into the Canadian Arctic, seeking the Northwest Passage. The ships were state-of-the-art. Supplies were abundant. Confidence was total. They were never seen again. It took over a decade and dozens of search missions to piece together what happened. The ships became trapped in ice. Franklin died in 1847. The survivors abandoned ship and tried to march south. They didn't make it. Starvation set in. Then scurvy. Then cannibalism. Inuit testimony, recovered artifacts, and eventually the discovery of the wrecks in 2014 and 2016 confirmed the nightmare. All 129 men died. Franklin's disaster reshaped Arctic exploration. It ended the age of hubris and forced a reckoning with the limits of human endurance. He sought a passage. He found a graveyard. Just missing the top spot at number 2, Henry Hudson. Hudson made 4 attempts to find a northern route to Asia. The first 3 failed but yielded valuable geographic knowledge. The 4th killed him. In 1610, Hudson sailed into the massive bay in northern Canada that now bears his name, convinced it was the gateway to the Pacific. It wasn't. Winter set in. The ship froze. Supplies dwindled. Tension rose. In June 1611, the crew mutinied. Hudson, his teenage son John, and 7 loyal crew members were forced into a small boat and set adrift in the icy waters of Hudson Bay. They were never seen again. The mutineers returned to England. Some faced proceedings. Accountability was limited, and Hudson's fate remained a mystery. His name is on one of the most important waterways in North America, but Henry Hudson himself, father, captain, explorer, simply vanished into the cold. You can survive the Arctic. You can't survive betrayal. And finally, in first place, Captain James Cook. Cook was the greatest navigator of the Age of Sail. 3 epic voyages, circumnavigation of the globe, mapping of New Zealand and the eastern coast of Australia, first recorded European contact with the Hawaiian Islands, advances in cartography, navigation, and the prevention of scurvy that saved thousands of lives. He was meticulous. He was brilliant. And he died because diplomacy failed. On his 3rd voyage, Cook returned to Hawaii in 1779. Relations with the native Hawaiians, initially friendly, soured after a series of thefts and misunderstandings. When a ship's boat was stolen, Cook attempted to take a local chief hostage to force its return. It escalated. A confrontation erupted on the beach. Cook, surrounded and overwhelmed, was stabbed and clubbed to death in the surf. His body was taken by the Hawaiians and dismembered in accordance with their funerary customs. Some remains were eventually returned to his crew. Most were not. Cook had survived shipwrecks, uncharted reefs, hostile waters, and isolation in the most remote parts of the planet. But in the end, it wasn't the sea that killed him. It was a breakdown in communication. A moment of poor judgment, and the reality that even the greatest explorer is just a man on a beach when violence breaks out. Cook's death marked the end of an era. The age of exploratory sail would continue, but never again with a single figure of his caliber. He mapped the world. The world buried him in pieces. 10 explorers. 10 final expeditions. Bass vanished into the ocean he charted. La Salle was murdered by his own men. Amundsen disappeared saving someone else. Bering died on a frozen island. Scott froze 11 miles from safety. Leichhardt walked into the desert and was erased. Fawcett became the lost city he sought. Franklin's entire crew perished in the ice. Hudson was cast adrift by mutineers. And Cook was killed on a beach in Paradise. Some of these are among the most famous names in exploration. Others have been largely forgotten. But they are the 10 explorers whose final journeys left the deepest mark on history. Not because they succeeded, because they never came back. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into exploration and history. Comment below. Who would you rank differently and why? Argue with facts, not feelings. See you in the next one.